Hi, I'm Christine. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my February end of the month reading wrap up. Alright, so for the month of February, I read 42 books for the month. So I've actually noticed for the past couple years, I feel like February is always a very stacked reading month for myself. Like, I don't know why, because it has the least amount of days of like in a month for the year. So that is always interesting to me. I don't know if it's because it's like the new year and I'm trying to like jam in all the reads that I can, or because it's a short month, I'm trying to like take advantage of all the days. I have no idea why, but this seems to always happen. So anyways, in today's video, I'm here with my end of the month wrap up. So I do my wrap ups in two parts. So I have a mid-month wrap up where I talk about the books that I read for the first half of February. So I'll link that below in the description of the video, as well as tag it up above. So if you missed it, you can go check those out. But in today's video, I'm here to talk about the other 19 books that I've read for the last half of February. As always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I read, I do review every book that I read, and my Goodreads where I review the books is always linked in the description of all of my videos. I also tag all of the books and the authors that I talk about in each video as well, so that if you missed one and you want to go back and see who I was talking about, what book I was talking about, they're going to be linked down below for you. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into those 19 books. All right, the first one that I have to talk about is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This is a audiobook ALC that I had early. The book and the audiobook are already out, but I did listen to this one and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. This one's giving like Gothic, Sapphic, vampires. It is a Carmilla retelling, which of course predates Dracula in vampire lore. This one I really enjoyed. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I was really pulled into the story and the characters. I do feel like Carmilla, the character in the story, wasn't used as much as she could have, but I feel like she's just such an iconic character, so it's hard to live up to kind of that when you're doing a retelling. It's hard to like live up to the original sometimes. I did really enjoy the Gothic elements of this one. I am a sucker for Gothic stories, and I love that kind of lust and desire and dread. I did really like in here as well how hunger and appetite really play a big role in the story. I mean, it's called Hungerstone, but it really very much like centered on hunger and appetite, whether that is hunger for food or for blood. I mean, we're talking about vampires here, their sexual appetite, desires, power, kind of all of those things. So I did really enjoy that. 4 stars for this one. Next up, I finally read His Tesoro by Amelia Rossi. So this is one that had been on my TBR from last year, and I'm so glad I waited to get to it because the audiobook recently came out and I loved the audio for this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. This one is a Mafia romance. It's the first in a new series from this author. I think this author, she does have a pen name, but this is like the first book under this pen name, and the second Mafia book in the series is coming out in April, which I'm very excited for. But anyways, this one is Mafia romance. We have age gap. The hero's older. This is an arranged marriage. We have Grumpy Sunshine. We have disability rep in here as well, and I just really enjoyed how the entire story came together. Basically in this one, the heroine, she has lived a very isolated life. She's the daughter of a Mafia member, and so she's grown up in Chicago, but she's never really left her house, let alone the city where she lives in. And so her father, because of Mafia reasons, end up having to marry her off to the hero, who is the head of like the 5 families in New York. And so he flies to Chicago to marry her, and that's kind of the first time that they meet, and she immediately gets whisked away with him back to New York, and so her whole world is kind of opened up. I really loved the heroine in here. She is so sunshiny, and I loved how the hero is kind of like more grumpy or stays away from her at first, but of course he is quickly just kind of like drawn to her and has to come around her as well. I just loved how protective he is of her and trying to just caretake for her because her family never really took care of her very well. And so in here, the heroine is a mobility aid user, which the hero ends up getting her a new wheelchair that is like specifically made for some of the things that she needs it for. And so we see her being a wheelchair user. She also used some other mobility aids as well, and he also gets her a service dog. This one very much gave me like older Mafia romance vibes. If you remember like a few years back when Mafia romances were super popular and at their height, I feel like this one kind of gave me all of those similar vibes, which I was really here for. Really enjoyed this one of my new recent favorite Mafia romances. Highly recommend. 4.5 stars. The audiobook's out now. Go read His Tesoro because the second book that is going to be following, I think the heroine's sister, is coming out in April. Next, I jumped into Broken Pact by Penelope Black. So this is the first book in her Avalon Falls series. So I have recently read 2 of her books, one of which I DNF'd, which was a different series, and this one is her newest series. And this one I gave 2 stars to. I didn't really enjoy it. I feel like the covers for the series are gorgeous. This, I know, is her newest series she's writing, and I just don't think she's the author for me. and that's okay. This one is the first book in a series, but it very much immediately gives you vibes of like all the other characters and the small town and the situations. Like all of these people have stories because you're kind of reminded about that a ton throughout, and there's like references made and just kind of all of these things with like side characters, and so you kind of feel like you're missing out on a ton. I will say the blurb and the tropes for this one is what kind of drew me in, along with the covers. So this is supposed to be like small town, fake dating, a little bit of second chance. There is grumpy sunshine. There's forced proximity, who hurt you, MC. It's kind of like romantic suspense as well. And I just felt like those were all said better than they were actually executed. Like the writing for it all, just, I don't think this author's style is for me. And even the suspense elements that come into the last half of the story, I felt like they were just very straightforward and kind of just like fed to you. So it didn't really land or have like an impact because it wasn't like shocking or twisty. So I don't know, not the author for me, 2 stars. Next, I read P.S. You're Intolerable by Julia Wolf. So this is a special edition that Dark and Quirky did. And I got this one, I think, last year. So it does have very pretty sprayed edges, very pretty edition, which actually my nails match it. I didn't even realize that. So this one had been on my TBR for quite some time. I know a ton of friends who love this book, and I think I grabbed the audiobook like during one of last year's maybe Audible sales, and so I decided to finally jump into it. This is a workplace romance where the hero is the boss and the heroine is his assistant, and I knew in here that the heroine is also like pregnant with somebody else's baby, and then it becomes like a single mom romance as well, and I know that there was curvy rep, and so I was just like in the mood to give it a try. So this was my first time reading this author, and I thought it was just okay. I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't like super in love with it, and I think I just went into it with different expectations. The heroine here is a very sweet, very like cinnamon rolly of wanting to take care of the heroine and her child as well. So it's just very like sweet and cutesy. I was kind of expecting a bit more as far as the plot, which is kind of just like a very straightforward plot. Like the tropes that you get, that's what you get from the book. So I guess if you're in the mood for that and kind of a very low angst book, this one is that. I just needed like some more character depth, something. So this one was just okay for me, 3 stars. Next, I read The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez. So this is a new novella, a short that she did for Amazon. So I think it's available with the KU Read and Listen feature. I had an early copy of this one because I think it was part of the Prime reading or first reads, whatever that situation is every month. So I grabbed it early. It's a really quick novella, so I finished it in one sitting and it was so cute. I gave this one 4 stars. This one is set around Valentine's Day weekend, but it isn't very like Valentine's Day-y, if that makes sense. So it kind of just takes place around that weekend, but it's not like very much in the holiday. So in this one, it was super fun and cute. The hero and the heroine, they live in the same apartment building and they both live on the 2nd story. And so one day the hero wakes up and he realizes that the stairs to leave their floor of the apartment building is just gone. Like the staircase is gone. There's no way down. So he ends up calling their landlord and they basically find out there was like a miscommunication with the maintenance crew. They took down the wrong staircase. So now the hero and the heroine are kind of stuck up where they live. And so basically the landlord, he tries to help them out. He offers to get them down, set them up at a hotel, give them money, give them food for the weekend. And they're like, no, it's fine. Like we're just going to work, kind of stay inside. Like it's totally cool. As long as there's like an emergency ladder for us to get down and like a bucket so people can like bring us food, we're good. So they kind of just use this time to spend the whole weekend together and kind of an excuse to get to know one another. The heroine is new there. And so they just like spend every day, every moment together up there on the 2nd floor. And here the heroine also has a stalker as well. So there is a little bit of suspense elements that comes into the story. It's a novella. It's very short. It was very fun, 4 stars. Next, I read The Runaway Heiress by Harper St. George. So this is a prequel novella that is part of her historical romance series, The Gilded West. So this series recently, she re-edited them and was able to either like get access back to them again, or maybe just re-edited them and put them back up on Kindle Unlimited. So I wanted to check them out because this is a historical romance author that I really enjoy. And so this is one of like her older series that she recently redid. This one is the prequel novella to the series and it was just okay for me. I gave it 3 stars. So this is a kind of Western historical romance that's set in the US. The hero and the heroine are going to Montana and it's like the 1880s. So in this one, as the title suggests, the heroine is an heiress. So she is basically supposed to get married to this like arranged marriage situation. And so her father kind of sends her on the way and he has the hero, who is a hired gunslinger, kind of take her to her intended, like take her to her betrothed. And so along the way, the hero and the heroine fall in love instead because of course the heroine doesn't want to go into this loveless marriage, and some other things kind of transpire on their journey. This one moves very fast and the heroine here, he kind of has his own like plans and secrets that he's working on. So he has to figure out how to kind of stay true to that while also kind of falling for the heroine heroine, and so now he doesn't want to lose her as well. And so things kind of go from there. Like, it was fine, it was okay, it wasn't my favorite, just very much like insta-lovey, and I didn't really feel a connection between the hero and the heroine. The writing as well was just kind of like a little bit scattered or disjointed, which I don't know if that's because the author like recently added more and kind of re-edited it, and so there was like pieces that just didn't really flow very well together with maybe like the original stuff. I don't know. It was just okay. 3 stars. Like I said, it is a prequel to the Gilded West series, which I might still try out because maybe with like longer page count, they'll be better, the other books in the series. So not really at the top of my priority list though. So we shall see, but this one was 3 stars for me. Next up is Scythe and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver. So this is a new release, and this is an exclusive edition that Barnes & Noble did. So I recently did a like come shopping with me weekend vlog, and this book was featured in that because I picked it up there. So this is like the holographic foiling, and then in here as well we get a gorgeous step back moment. It has a raccoon in here, which is featured in the book, so I loved it and had to grab this one. This is actually my favorite in the series, and this one I ended up giving 4.5 stars to. So this is the final book in the Ruinous Love trilogy. Like I said, I've read the whole series. The other books were both like 4 stars for me, kind of like lower 4 stars, but this one was 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. It was so much fun. You can definitely read these all as standalones. The heroes in the series are connected though, because they're all brothers. So like in this book, you're going to see the other couples of the books kind of make appearances in here, but like you don't need to read them all to get the gist of this book either, because it is a standalone romance. These ones are dark romances, and they are also dark humor, so just know that going in. I really enjoyed them. This one in particular, the heroine works at the circus, so that's kind of why there are all these circus-themed emojis on it. And in her free time, her kind of side job is a serial killer, where she takes out men who are doing wrong to women in her life, and so we kind of see that transpire. And then the hero in here, he is a doctor in a small town, and like I said, he is the brother of the heroes of the previous books in the series. And so in here, basically the heroine ends up getting an injury, and the circus that she's been a part of since she was 15, the boss of that is basically like telling her, okay, you need to take a rest, take a break, you're always on, and now you're injured, like you need to stay in the small town, heal up, stay with this doctor, and kind of like get your life together before you come back. And so she ends up doing that, so we get forced proximity because they are roommates, and it is honestly just so much fun. Really enjoyed this one. Like I said, the audiobooks are so fun, and so yeah, 4.5 stars for this one for me. Next is For Better or Worse by Ava Hunter. So first off, I love the cover for this one. This book didn't really work for me though. I ended up giving it 3 stars. This is an author that I have read. I think this is the 3rd book I've read from them, and one of the books I loved, one of the books I didn't like, and this one's just kind of mid for me. So I don't know. This author's very like hit and miss for me. This one is an enemies to lovers, opposites attract, grumpy pairing, where the heroine in here, she basically has kind of these odd jobs. And so right now she is a death doula, which basically she's kind of like a companion, a hired companion to hang out with somebody during their last days, months, year, whatever the case, and kind of help them and their family go through those last stages of going from life to death. So in here, she's hired on to work for a wealthy kind of hotel empire owner, and so he is the grandfather of the hero, and so that is her current kind of job. And so basically the man that she works for, he wants to bring her along on his kind of last family vacation with all of his family. They want to go to Hawaii and spend some quality time together because he is obviously ill. And so she goes along, and when she gets there, she meets the hero, who is her boss's like favorite grandson. And so immediately she's like, oh god, this is going to be a problem because I actually broke up this guy's wedding a couple years back. So she had another odd job in the past where she was a hired kind of wedding ruiner, and so somebody had hired her to ruin the hero's wedding, and so broke up the wedding, and so the hero has some like animosity towards her, obviously. So it kind of goes from there, and this one I just felt like it was very long and it was very repetitive, and we just kind of got the same conversations, the same situations over and over. So yeah, like I said, I gave it 3 stars. So there were parts of it that I enjoyed, but the overall pacing, I had major issues with it, and it was just a book that I took forever to get through. Like, it was not a book I was wanting to kind of get back to and read, and so I don't know. So 3 stars for me. Like I said, the cover is stunning and I love it so much, but the book was just okay for me. So, I mean, this author's kind of hit and miss for me, so take that into consideration, but 3 stars for me, sadly. So then I did some audiobooks, so I jumped into Forged in Blood by Sadie Kincaid, and this one was so much fun. So this is a why choose vampire paranormal kind of situation, and this was so much fun. I gave it 4 stars. I ended up binging this in a day when I was working, and it was just like the perfect audiobook to have going while I was getting some work done. So like I said, this is why choose. So the heroine in here, she basically, I liken fantasies and paranormals where the heroine is kind of learning the world with us as the reader. And so the heroine, that's definitely the case. She's very naive to kind of supernaturals and things that are happening around her. And so we get to see her kind of see that explored as the heroes, these vampires all find her. And it kind of goes from there. Very spicy, but like very fun. So 4 stars. Then I jumped into the second book, which is Promised in Blood. This is a continuation. It follows the same characters. I feel like if you enjoy Tessa Hale's writing, then you'll really enjoy this author's writing as well. Very like kind of similar vibes as far as the writing and the characters, and just like a fun time. So this one I gave 4 stars to as well. This one I think I liked a little bit more than the first book, because in here it kind of opens up the paranormal world and we see some other supernaturals. So we see some werewolves and shifters and dragons and kind of all of these things, and I was just invested. So yeah, I really enjoyed both of the books in the series. The third book actually comes out at the end of March and I can't wait. These first 2 books, the audiobooks, are available on Hoopla, so like check your library resources because they were available for the audiobooks through my library, which I loved. So yeah, 4 stars for both of these. They are just a fun why choose vampire time. Next I read Homebound by Meredith Trapp. So this is another one where I love the cover. Look at this cover. It's so pretty. Love it so much. But I'm not sure if this author is for me. So this one I gave 3/3.5 stars. This one I will say I super flew through the story. It was very easy to just get into it and binge. There were so many quotable moments in this book, so many things I highlighted. So if you like books where it very much kind of spoon feeds you these very like highlightable moments in romances, then this book is definitely that. Like I had to make a whole post about it on Instagram with just like a glimpse of some of the highlighted moments I enjoyed in here. So if you want a book like that, that's very easy to get into and very like quotable, this book is definitely that. This author now, I have read both of her books. So I read Icebound and then I read this book as well, and they both exist in the same series, but we're following different characters, of course. And so I don't know, I'm not sure if her books are for me. I feel like they're very easy to binge and get into, but they don't really leave me feeling any sort of way about the books or the characters, if that makes sense. So like they're fine, but I don't love them. So I don't know, take that for what you will. And here, basically, it is a childhood friends to lovers setup where the hero and the heroine were best friends in the past as children, which we see kind of played out in the story. And basically, the hero would always come to like where the heroine lives for the summer. So they spent a lot of time together growing up. And then one time he just like disappeared and never came back. And so now it is a few years later and he's back, and now he's a single dad and a hockey player as well. The heroine in here is a bull rider, which I did love to see that. So basically in here, the hero has been into the heroine for years. Like since they were children, he has wanted her, but it was always kind of like the right person, wrong time. So always she would be in a relationship, she was engaged. And so now he finds out that her engagement broke up, and he immediately comes back to the small town and is like, yes, please, this is my moment. I'm going to prove to her that we belong together. And so we get this like forced proximity because they end up becoming roommates as well, because she lives in a barn on his family's kind of like farm, flower farm, I think. And so he's basically like, hey, we have to live with you as well, him and his baby daughter. So they move in. And so it was all just very okay. Like, I don't know, I love a single parent romance, especially a single dad story. But this one, I don't know, like I am a parent and I just felt, I don't know, it didn't really work for me, like the way that the single dad and his daughter were kind of like described in the book. I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite thing. So, but I kind of feel like that overall with this author's books. So I don't know, 3.5 stars. Next, I read Miss Morgan's Book Brigade by Janet Skesling Charles. And so this one, I had read the previous book from this author, which is The Paris Library. Read that last month and I thought it was just okay. So somebody had recommended to me to read this book instead. It's the author's newest book that came out last year, and they said it was a lot better. So I did take their recommendation and I jumped into the audiobook of this one from my library. And this one I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. So this one takes place during World War I, which I love World War I historical fictions. I feel like I've just been like tapped out kind of World War II content over the years, and I feel like World War I is one that isn't kind of discussed as much, or I don't see a lot of content for. So in this one, the heroine is a librarian at the New York Public Library. So it's 1918, so like I said, set during World War I, and the heroine in here, basically she ends up working with Anne Morgan, who is the daughter of JP Morgan. So she's like the heiress to the largest US banking fortune, and this woman, who is a true person in history, she ended up doing a lot of giving back and doing things, and she was a philanthropist in general. And so the main character that we follow, Jessie, she ends up joining, let me see, it's the American Committee for Devastated France that the millionaire Anne Morgan founded, where basically it was a group of international women who are going to France to help them rebuild after World War I. So we see in here how Jessie goes over to France and she ends up starting up like the first children's libraries in France, which they, I guess, didn't have at the time. So that was a very new concept to them. And then she also like helps a bunch of the first, I think, female librarians in France at the time. She gets them hired and kind of teaches them about bookbinding and all of these things. So I feel like if you're a book lover, kind of library nerd, this book is definitely for you. We also get to see, which I thought was really cool, they build these bookmobiles, which is basically what it sounds like books, libraries on wheels, where they ended up taking ambulances and a lot of vehicles that were used during the war that are no longer in use, and they transform them and kind of turn them into these public books on wheels type of situation. So I thought that was really cool. And so then in the other timeline, because this is in dual timeline, it is the 1980s, and we're following this woman who also works at the New York Public Library. So she is reading about this woman, Jessie, and all the things that she did and how she was like somebody that she had never heard of, and she's really invested in her life and her story. And then she's like, okay, she just like disappeared from the timeline. Like nothing else is written about her. Like what happened to her? And it goes from there. So we get to see this dual timeline. I really enjoyed this one. At 4 stars, the audiobook was fantastic. Then I read Harlem Rhapsody by Victoria Christopher Murray. So this was the Leave It to the Pros book club pick, which I am a co-host for a historical fiction book club, and this was our February pick. So this is a new release in February, and this was one that was high on my TBR for the year. So this one I ended up giving 4 stars to. This one takes place in kind of the early 1920s in Harlem. So this is very much centered around the Harlem Renaissance. And in here we're following Jessie, who becomes the literary editor, the first literary editor for the Crisis magazine. And so I really loved her story. This again is based off of a true person in history, and so I really liked seeing how she kind of would find and uplift a lot of these Black voices and artists of the time, like Langston Hughes and County Colin. She ended up finding them and being their first editor. Loved seeing that so much and seeing her kind of work during that time. And then in here we also delve into her relationship with W.E.B. Du Bois at the time, which was the actual, like, I think editor, founder of the Crisis magazine. He was also one of the founders of the NAACP. And so we see her very like interesting, fluid, I guess, relationship you could say through the years with them. It's very much ups and downs and some interpersonal things as well as their work relationship. That part I will say I wasn't as invested in. I really liked just kind of focusing on Jessie and seeing her work. She wants to be a writer. She's also, like I said, helping all of these writers of the time, and I really liked those aspects of the story. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Church Girl by Naima Simone. So this is an author that I love. I have read so many of her books. This is her newest release. I think it just came out in November or December, and so I put a hold for my library for the ebook, and it finally came in. So this one I jumped into. This one I ended up giving 3 stars to. Not my favorite from this author, but like wasn't terrible either. This one is an opposites attract age gap romance. The hero is older. It is single dad and nanny, where the hero is a tattoo shop owner. He's a single dad, and the heroine is a preacher's daughter who ended up running away from her wedding when the story starts. And we see her moving to a new city to go to a school, and that is where she ends up getting her job for being the hero's nanny as well for his daughter. This one is kind of on the shorter side, and I feel like it's very spicy, and it's very much like it delivers on the tropes that it says it is. This one, the heroine has a lot of drama with her family and kind of her ex, and then the hero as well has some drama with his ex, who he co-parents with, and it just kind of goes from there, like a very straightforward story. So it was okay for me, just nothing that like set it apart from other books that have the single dad nanny kind of setup. So it was okay for me, 3 stars, not my favorite from this author. Then I had an ALC, an audiobook of Never Been Worse by Morgan Elizabeth. So this is a March release for the author, and it has now come out. I think by the time this video is going up, the book will be out. So this is the 3rd in her Evergreen Park series, which is a series I haven't read, but they're all standalones, kind of exist in the same like friend group. And so I had read this author before, and so I wanted to give this one a try. And this one, it was okay. It was like 3.5/4 stars for me. I feel like this author has very much found her niche in doing like revenge romances. So basically the whole like premise is kind of set around a revenge. So this one we get Marriage of Convenience. We have the hero. He is kind of a rock star. He's part of a band, and the heroine is a fashion designer. So when the story starts, the heroine finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her, and so he is also trying to ruin her career now. And so she decides, you know what, I'm gonna get revenge on you. She goes to a charity auction, and she ends up bidding on kind of a night or a date with the hero, who is a rock star, and he is like from her ex's like favorite band. So she's like, I'm going to win this and spend some time with your favorite person. So that ends up happening, and then the hero, he actually like, he's already followed first for the heroine. They kind of exist in the same friend group, and so he's like, this is perfect because I adore her, want to get to know her more. He's kind of been like secretly pining for her for a while. So he kind of throws out this kind of like publicity PR stunt of a marriage of convenience so that the band, kind of the focus can come off of some of the other members of the band and kind of focus on the marriage. And so the heroine surprisingly says yes as well, because she's like, this will help me with my kind of fashion design business that is kind of about to tank because of all the like rumors my ex is spreading. And it goes from there. Very straightforward, very much that like forced proximity that marriage of conveniences lead to. Like I said, he falls first, and it's very easy. So it's very fun. 3.5 3.5/4 stars for me. Next up, I read Secrets of Mine by Alexis Grace. So this is a follow-up, or the second book in the, I think Killer of Mine was the first book last year. That book I enjoyed. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. This one I did not. This one I gave 2 stars. I won't be continuing on with this series, maybe with this author at all. I don't know, we shall see. But this series in particular I am done with. So basically this is a Why Choose where they're all FBI members. So there's 1 heroine, 4 heroes, and they're trying to track down the heroine's father, who is a serial killer. So it kind of continues on where book 1 left off. This one I felt like some of my issues were there wasn't like a balance between the suspense elements and the super spicy times. Like they are very just like hot and horny for one another all the time. And in the middle there would be like kind of mixed in and them looking for victims or finding some crime scenes, things like that, and then immediately jump back into bed together. So not very good balance for me. I also felt like while the spice did deliver in this one, I felt like it didn't add anything to the characters, to their story, to the plot. It was just kind of there. So it just was what it is. The spice is spicing, and if that's what you want, go ahead and give this one a try. It just didn't work for me. There were some like kind of family secrets and some twists that kind of come up at the end of the book, leaves off on a cliffhanger, similar to how the first book did, but it just wasn't for me. I wasn't invested enough. 2 stars. Then I had an audiobook, ALC of The Night and the Butcher Bird by Alex E. Haro. This is another one that is out now on KU with the read and listen feature, and it is very, very short, like 30, 40 pages. This one I had fun with, and I gave it 4 stars. So I really love this author's writing. She writes very much like atmospheric vibes, which I'm here for. This is basically set a couple hundred years in the future, society and everything broke down, and now there are these like demons that people kind of turn into, and nobody knows why or how or if they can stop it. So basically in here we're following the main character, and she is a storyteller of her small town, her community, and there are demons around the village where they live. And then the other character we follow is a knight, and he is basically hired to come and to kill the current demon that is kind of outside of the village. And so the main heroine we're following, the storyteller, she doesn't want that to happen because she's like, I actually think that demon is my wife, and I think she's still in there, so like please don't kill her. And so it basically kind of goes from there, and it was very interesting and I enjoyed it. So yeah, 4 stars, very short, like 30-40 pages. Then I read The Devil's Charm by Megan Frampton. So this is the first book in a new series from her, which is the Heirs and Spares series. This one I gave 3/3.5 stars for. I feel like this author, I have read countless of her books and series now, and I feel like they're fun while I'm reading them, but as far as like lasting impressions or ones I would like automatically jump to recommend, not really the case. Like they're fun, but they're not favorites. So take that as what you will. This one I especially love the cover, so that's why I was excited to get to it, and so I grabbed the audiobook from my library. This one is an opposites attract romance, and they're from rival families, so I did love that setup where the hero is more of a kind of rakish, devilish, he's like the second son of the family type of hero, and so the heroine is very much this rule-following lady. And so basically in here they have this like attraction to one another, and then they are also from rival families, but they also have to come together and work together. Kind of goes from there. Like I said, it was okay. 3 stars. I feel like it just lasted a little too long. And like I said, it's not going to be one that I remember in a few months. So 3.5 stars. All right, and then the last one that I read is An Improper Proposal by Patricia Cabot. So this is the same author that is Meg Cabot. This is her historical romance pen name. So this was the Historical Hellions book club pick for February, which I'm a co-host for that book club, and we read historical romances published before the year 2000. So this was our February pick. This one I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. I think we all enjoyed this one overall for the book club. This one was just like very rompy and fun. So I feel like if that's kind of what you're in the mood for, pick it up. Basically in here, the heroine has grown up always on ships, like on boats. Her father is like a shipping kind of empire guy, and she is the only daughter with a bunch of brothers. And so she always grew up on the ships, and she is dreaming of being her own captain one day. She's like, on my 19th birthday, I'm obviously going to get my own ship. Like that's what happened to all of my brothers. I can be the captain of my own ship and kind of go from there. But of course her brothers and her father are like, yeah, that's actually not going to happen. You might have grown up always on ships, but now we want you to be a lady, go into society, get married, do all of those things. And the heroine is like, absolutely not. Like, what are you talking about? I love being on the sea, on the ocean, on my own ship. Like, those are my dreams. And so in here, we see how she is kind of crushing on the hero, who is all of her brothers' like best friend. And he is somebody who has worked for her family as well and been on ships. And so she is crushing on him, but he's actually engaged to somebody else. So the start of the book is where they are basically all at the night before the hero's wedding. And so you kind of see reasons of why he's betrothed and engaged and it's not for love. And so that's kind of the setup. And then the heroine gets mad as well because her father ends up giving the boat, the ship that the heroine wants to get, he ends up giving that to the hero as a wedding gift. So the heroine is absolutely so mad. And it kind of goes from there. And there's very much like pirates and kind of at sea adventures. And the first part I will say is very slow. Very much like, I think the first half of the book, the first 40% lasts like for 2 days, but then the book starts to pick up from there. So it was just fun and rompy and very much like set around this whole family. So a fun time, 4 stars. All right, so those are all the books that I read for the last half of February. Definitely let me know what books you read for February. If you read any of the same books, what some of your favorites were, I would love to know. If you want to leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a ring since we had kind of the wedding situation in an improper proposal. So leave me like a wedding ring, anything wedding related for this book. Like I said, all the titles and the authors that I talked about will be down in the description of the video. So if you missed any and want to go back and see them, they're all linked below. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!